The world of perfection, the girl of flaws. The world of Venus 4 was called a jewel among the stars. Its twin suns rose each morning, pouring golden light over crystal mountains. The peaks caught the rays like giant prisms, scattering rainbows across the valleys. Fields of soft blue grass stretched endlessly, swaying with the wind like waves of an ocean. From a distance, the planet looked like paradise. From orbit, explorers whispered that Venus was perfection itself, but beauty can hide cruelty. The people of Venus, the Veyari, were tall, graceful, and proud. Their silver skin reflected light like polished glass. Crowns of living crystal grew from their heads, glowing faintly as if carrying starlight inside. To outsiders, the Veyari seemed like gods. To themselves, they were guardians of perfection. Every child was judged at birth. If a crown of crystal was uneven, if a body showed the smallest weakness, if a face carried the tiniest flaw, the verdict was swift, fractured. A fractured child was not worthy of the Veyari name. That was how Kaylin's story began. When she was born, the healers whispered. Her crown was small, its crystal underdeveloped, not sharp and proud like the others. Her body was delicate, smaller than normal. She will not lead, her father declared coldly. She will bring only shame. From the first day, her fate was written. As she grew, Kaylin saw the way others looked at her. In the bright markets of the city, Veyari mothers pulled their children aside when she passed. Merchants refused to meet her eyes, though they could not deny her golden gaze, eyes brighter than most. Some even muttered, "How can one so flawed walk among us?" Her heart learned silence. She walked with her head bowed, her steps light, trying to be invisible. Kaylin's parents carried their shame until they could bear it no longer. When she was only 10 cycles old, they took her to the outer colonies, the wild, half-ruined edges of Venus where the fractured were left behind. "You will never bond," her mother said, voice flat like stone. "You are nothing to us." And they left her there without a final touch, without a backward glance. The outer colonies were a graveyard of broken crystal halls and shattered spires, remnants of cities long abandoned. Among these ruins, Kaylin built a shelter with her small hands. She gathered scraps of food left behind by passing traders. She drank from rain that slid down broken crystal walls. She learned to survive not because anyone cared, but because the stars still watched. Her only companion was loneliness. Night, when the 2 moons of Venus rose pale and silver, she climbed the cliffs above the valley. There, with the wind whipping against her hair, she looked up at the stars. The galaxy stretched wide and endless, filled with countless suns and countless worlds. She wondered if out there, on one of those worlds, there might be someone who would not see her as broken, someone who might call her more than fractured, but morning always came and the dream would fade. She would return to her ruined shelter, her fragile body wrapped in silence. Still something inside her refused to die. Kaylin was different, yes, but she was not weak. Though her crystal crown was smaller, her golden eyes glowed brighter than fire. Though she lacked the height of her people, her spirit carried a quiet strength. When storms struck the colonies and lightning shattered the cliffs, she did not hide. She stood beneath the thunder, her heart echoing with its wild rhythm. She whispered to the sky, "I am still here." The Veyari would never understand that strength. To them, perfection was everything. To them, Kaylin was a scar across their mirror. But she was more than they could ever see. And one evening, as the twin suns bled violet across the sky, she felt a shadow near the cliffs, a presence she had never known before. For a heartbeat, she thought it was another Veyari come to sneer at her. But the figure was different. The shape, the walk, the strange clothing. Not one of her kind. Someone else. Someone from beyond the Articusondirn and the stranger beneath the twin suns. The violet dusk of Venus therefore painted the cliffs in fire and shadow. Kaylin stood alone at her usual perch, the wind pulling at her dark hair. the stars beginning to awaken in the sky. She thought the night would be as it always was, quiet, empty, endless. But then she felt it, a shift in the air, a presence not her own. At first she thought it was a trick of light, a shimmer from the crystal cliffs. But when she turned, her heart stopped. A figure moved among the ridges below, a figure unlike any she had ever seen. He was not Vayari. The stranger's form was strange yet strong, his body wrapped in unfamiliar cloth, not crystal armor. His skin was soft, his hair dark, his face open in a way no Vayari would ever allow. He carried strange tools on his belt, metallic and blinking with soft blue lights. He moved with caution, but also with purpose, as though he was measuring the very bones of the planet. Kaylin's breath caught. For cycles she had been alone. Now, a living being from beyond the stars had stepped into her silence. She ducked behind a shard of crystal, heart pounding. If he saw her, what would he do? She was fractured, cast out by her own kind. To be seen by an outsider was unthinkable, yet curiosity burned hotter than fear. Slowly she peeked out again. The stranger paused as if sensing eyes upon him. He looked up. For one instant their gazes met across the distance, and Kaylin froze. His eyes were not cold like the Vayari. They were warm, searching, alive. In them, she saw no judgment, no disgust, only wonder. It was too much. She turned and fled into the ruins, her footsteps scattering dust and shards. Behind her she thought she heard him call out, though his voice was strange, shaped by a tongue she had never heard. She did not stop running until the safety of her crystal shelter closed around her. That night, she could not sleep. His eyes haunted her. The way he had looked at her, not as broken glass but as something worth seeing. The next evening, when the suns dipped low again, Kaylin returned to the cliffs. She told herself it was only to make sure he was gone. But when she reached her perch, she froze once more. He was there again. The human, though she did not yet know the word, was moving carefully across the rocks, scanning the ground with one of his glowing tools. Then, to her surprise, he placed something gently on the stone ledge. A piece of fruit. Bright, golden, still fresh. He set it down, stepped back, and left without a word. Kaylin's throat tightened. No one had given her anything in years. The next day, there was water. Clear, sealed in a strange, smooth container. The day after, another gift, a small object that glittered like starlight, shaped unlike anything she had ever seen. She held it in her hands, marveling at its design. Why was he leaving these things? What did he want? On the fourth night, when the moons rose pale and full, Kaylin made her choice. She waited until he placed another offering, this time a small metallic disc that hummed faintly with sound, and then she stepped from the shadows. "You are human," she said, her voice trembling. The stranger turned quickly, his eyes widening at the sight of her. For a moment silence hung heavy between them, broken only by the wind. Then he smiled, slow and gentle, as if not to frighten her. "And you are Vayari," he said. His accent bent the word strangely, but he spoke it with care. His voice was deeper than she expected, carrying warmth. Kaylin's shoulders tensed. She lowered her eyes, waiting for the insult she had heard all her life. Fractured, broken, worthless. Instead, the human tilted his head. "But different," he added. Her chest tightened. "They call me fractured," she whispered. "Cast me out. You should too." But he shook his head. His gaze was steady, his voice quiet but unshakable. "Where I come from," he said, "different doesn't mean worthless, it means special." The word struck her like lightning. No one, not her parents, not her people, not anyone, had ever said such a thing to her. For a long moment she could only stare, her golden eyes wide, her heart beating so loud she feared he could hear it. She wanted to run. She wanted to believe. She wanted both at once. That night, Kaylin returned to her shelter in silence, clutching the humming disc he had left her. She pressed it close, listening to the strange music inside. Her loneliness no longer felt the same. And in the distance, beneath the twin suns, the human's shadow returned again, waiting. For the first time in her life, Kaylin wondered if being different might not be a curse and but a beginning. Secrets in the shadows. The nights of Venos grew different after that first meeting. For years, Kaylin had walked alone among crystal ruins, her footsteps echoing against the silence. Now there was another sound, a human voice, warm and unafraid, drifting through the twilight air. At first, she only approached cautiously, keeping distance between them. She would stand on a ridge above while he spoke below, his words carried by the wind. He told her his name, Elias Carter, a surveyor from Earth. She did not know this Earth, but his voice filled the emptiness around her, and she listened. He spoke of oceans that stretched beyond the horizon, of forests where air itself breathed with life. She imagined such places with wonder. So much water in one place, she whispered once. Enough to drown cities, Elias had laughed softly. Yes, but also enough to cradle the world. Kaylin found herself smiling without realizing it. She had not smiled in years. As the days turned to weeks, the distance between them shrank. He would sit on the edge of the cliffs, leaving space beside him. At first she remained standing, arms folded, uncertain, but little by little she drew closer. One night, when the moons cast silver light, she sat only a few steps away. It was Elias who broke the silence. "Why do they call you fractured?" Her golden eyes darkened. She lifted her hand to her small, uneven crystal crown. "Because this is wrong," she said bitterly. "Not sharp, not perfect. My body is small, weak. They see me and they see shame." Elias shook his head slowly. "Back home, we stumble, we fall, we break bones, we make mistakes. That's just life." "You stumble?" she asked, tilting her head, almost amused. "All the time," he said, a grin tugging at his lips. She studied him, confused and fascinated. "And you are not cast out?" "No," he said. "Sometimes stumbling is how we learn." Something inside her cracked, not in pain but in wonder. She laughed, soft at first, then brighter, the sound echoing through the cliffs. It startled even her. She had not laughed since childhood. Elias only listened, smiling, as though her laughter itself was a treasure. He brought her gifts beyond food and water, small devices from his ship, objects that made sound. He showed her how to place her hand on a thin instrument with strings, how pressing one finger here and another there created notes. At first her touch was clumsy, but the sound filled her shelter with life. In return, Kaylin sang to him. Not full songs, only fragments, the ancient melodies of the Veyari. Her voice carried like light through crystal, haunting yet beautiful. Elias would close his eyes, listening, as if the air itself turned to gold. Together, they made something new. Music that had never existed before, born from a fractured girl and a human wanderer. And yet every moment of closeness carried danger. Kaylin knew the laws of her people. If the council ever discovered her secret meetings, it would mean disgrace, or worse. Sometimes, when the wind shifted, she thought she heard footsteps echoing too close, whispers drifting across the ruins. Fear curled in her stomach. But then Elias would smile at her, or laugh at some small mistake on the strings, and the fear would melt away. One stormy night, the winds howled like beasts, shaking her crystal shelter. Elias stayed inside with her, their shadows huddled close, beneath the flicker of lightning. Kaylin's heart raced as thunder rolled above. She looked at him, at the human who had given her more than survival. He had given her hope. "Why do you stay?" she whispered, her voice almost breaking. "You could return to your kind. Leave me to the silence." Elias reached out slowly, carefully, until his hand brushed hers. His skin was warm, solid, alive. Because you're not silenced, Kaelin, he said. His voice was low, steady. You're the most beautiful sound I've ever found. Her breath caught. She wanted to believe, but years of rejection chained her heart. What if he lied? What if he left too? Yet when exhaustion overcame her, she leaned against him for the first time. Her body trembled, but his arms steadied her. That night, she fell, asleep in his embrace. But peace is fragile when it hides in shadows. The Veyari were not blind. Rumors spread through the outer colonies, of the fractured girl seen on the cliffs, of the human who returned night after night. Some whispered with disgust, others with curiosity. The council heard these whispers, and they did not forgive. Yariye. Bond Kaelin thought was her salvation would soon be tested in fire and blood, because perfection does not forgive imperfection. Judgment of the Crystal Throne. The secret could not last forever. Whispers spread like cracks through crystal. A fractured girl, long thought lost, was seen walking with a stranger, a human. To the proud Veyari, it was worse than sin. It was insult. The High Council summoned soldiers, their silver armor gleaming, their crystal crowns blazing with judgment. One dawn, Kaelin woke to the echo of boots. The ground trembled. The crystal ruins around her flared with light as soldiers marched into the valley. She had no time to run. Kaelin of the fractured line, one guard thundered, his voice like breaking stone. You are summoned before the Crystal Throne. Her heart clenched. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Hands seized her arms, cold and merciless, dragging her from the shelter she had built with her own scars. Elias was not there. He would not know. The throne room of the Veyari Council blazed with cruel beauty. Columns of living crystal rose high, glowing with inner fire. The air was heavy with judgment. At the center, the High Chancellor sat upon the crystalline throne, his crown tall and sharp, his eyes colder than starlight. Before him, Kaelin was thrown to her knees. Around her, the chamber filled with voices, council members, nobles, guards, all staring at her as though she were a stain on their perfect mirror. She should have been cast into the void long ago. One voice spat. She stains our people. By existing, another sneered. Kaelin trembled, but she lifted her chin. For once she would not bow her head. Then the chamber doors burst open. Elias. He had fought his way inside, bruised and bloodied, guards gripping his arms. They forced him down beside her. His breathing was ragged, but his eyes never left hers. In them she saw no fear, only fury at those who dared to condemn her. The High Chancellor rose. His voice rang across the hall. This fractured one is nothing. She should have been erased. Instead, she defiles herself further, consorting with an outsider. His gaze cut toward Elias. A human. The chamber hissed with outrage. Crystalline crowns glowed brighter in anger. She will be exiled beyond the stars, the Chancellor declared. His hand swept toward Elias. And he will be executed. At once. Kaelin's heart tore open. No, she cried. Her voice cracked. But it echoed through the chamber. He showed me kindness you never did. He saw me as more than broken, the council sneered. Because humans are blind to truth. They embrace weakness as though it were strength. Elias struggled against the guards, his voice raw but thunderous. Maybe weakness is strength. You cast out someone extraordinary because she doesn't fit your perfect mold. Where I come from, we fight to protect those differences. The hall fell silent for a breath. Even some counselors shifted uneasily. But the Chancellor's face hardened like stone. You dare lecture us, human? Then you will die with your weakness. He raised a blade of living crystal, sharp as light itself. Guards held Elias down, forcing his neck bare. Kaelin's heart hammered, her body shaking. She could not lose him. Not him, not the only one who ever called her special. But before the blade could fall, the ground roared. A storm unlike any in centuries struck the city. Lightning split the sky, striking crystal towers. The walls of the chamber shuddered, shards raining from above. Cries filled the hall. Kaelin's instincts screamed. This was her moment. With strength born of desperation, she twisted from the guard's grip, shards cutting into her skin. She lunged forward, breaking free, and seized Elias's hand. "Run!" Together they bolted through the trembling hall, lightning flashing through shattered windows. Guards shouted, chasing them. Crystal fragments rained like falling stars, illuminating their path in ghostly blue. Elias stumbled once, but Kaelin pulled him forward. Her small frame, once scorned as weak, carried a strength none had seen. They dashed through collapsing corridors, the roar of destruction behind them. At last, they burst into the open air. The storm tore across the sky, lightning spears crashing into spires, reducing proud towers to rubble. Ahead, through the rain of fire and crystal, Elias's small survey shuttle waited on the cliff. He turned to her, breathless, desperate. "Come with me. We can leave this world behind, find somewhere you belong." Kaelin froze. Behind her was the only home she had ever known. A home that rejected her, that branded her fractured, that now sought her death. Before her stood Elias, the human who had seen her, held her, believed in her. Her choice was lightning in her veins. She tightened her grip on his hand. Yes. Together they ran toward the shuttle, their figures vanishing into the storm as Venos itself cracked apart behind them. But fleeing was only the beginning. Beyond the storm lay the stars, and the dangers of a galaxy that had no mercy for fugitives. Escape through the storm. The storm of Venos 4 was no ordinary storm. It was as though the planet itself had risen against the cruelty of its people. Lightning ripped across the sky in white spears, striking the crystal towers until they shattered. Like glass, spires that had stood for centuries collapsed in showers of sparks. The proud city of the Veyari screamed as if alive, its perfection crumbling into ruin. Through the chaos, Kaelin and Elias ran. Her smaller frame darted ahead, pulling him with surprising strength. Guards shouted behind them, their crystal armor glowing like ghostly fire in the storm. Arrows of pure energy flew past, searing the ground. One struck a pillar beside Kaelin, exploding into shards that cut across her cheek. She did not stop. "Faster!" Elias shouted above the roar, his voice carried away by thunder. Their boots pounded across trembling bridges of crystal, each step dangerous, each heartbeat louder than the storm itself. They reached a crumbling causeway high above the valley floor. The bridge cracked beneath them, glowing fissures racing along its length. A squad of soldiers blocked the far end, spears raised, their crowns shining with fury. Kaelin skidded to a halt. Trapped. Elias's mind raced. He grabbed a shard of crystal fallen from the walls, its edge sharp, alive with energy. "Stay behind. Me," he growled. The guards advanced, but before they could strike, the storm itself intervened. A bolt of lightning ripped the sky, shattering the bridge. The soldiers screamed as the ground fell away beneath them. Kaelin and Elias leapt together, landing hard on the fractured edge. The rest of the causeway plunged into the abyss. Kaelin gasped, her chest heaving. Elias caught her hand again. Their eyes met. For one breath, time froze. Her golden eyes glowing with defiance, his human gaze burning with resolve. "Run," he whispered. And they did. At last, through the chaos, the cliffs opened before them. Lightning illuminated the survey shuttle, small, battered, but alive. Its hull gleamed like hope itself against the storm, but hope was never given so easily. A final line of guards stood between them and freedom, their weapons raised. Dawang. Chancellor himself strode among them, his crystalline blade still burning from where he had nearly ended Elias's life. "Fractured child," he thundered, voice echoing through the storm. "You disgrace us further by fleeing with this outsider. Better the void swallow you both." Kaelin's chest rose and fell. For years she had bowed her head, endured their sneers. But not now. Not when Elias's hand held hers, warm and steady. She stepped forward, lightning flashing across her face. "You call me broken," she shouted, her voice ringing louder than thunder. "But I am stronger than your perfect lies. The Chancellor sneered. Then die with your weakness. The guards charged. Elias shoved Kalen toward the shuttle. Go, he yelled. He swung the crystal shard like a blade, blocking a strike, sparks flying. Kalen's heart screamed to leave him, but she could not. She seized a fallen spear, her small hands trembling, but she raised it all the same. Together they fought, back human and outcast against a wall of perfection. Lightning struck again, blinding them all. The ground quaked, opening fissures in the cliffs. For one impossible heartbeat, the storm fought at their side, tearing through the guards with raw fury. Kalen grabbed Elias's arm. Now! They broke through the line, stumbling up the ramp of the shuttle. Elias slammed the controls, the engines roaring to life. Blue fire lit the cliffs, wind whipping around them. The High Chancellor lunged forward, his blade raised high. You cannot escape your blood, fractured one. Kalen's eyes blazed. She slammed her hand on the shuttle door controls. The ramp, sealed shut with a hiss, cutting off his words. Inside, Elias pulled the ship free from the trembling earth. The shuttle rose into the storm, crystal towers collapsing below, guards scattering like insects. Lightning slashed across the hull, alarms shrieking, but Elias's hands gripped the controls with iron focus. Hold on, he shouted. Kalen braced herself, her small frame thrown against the seat as the shuttle climbed higher, higher, through the fury of the sky. The storm roared as though determined to drag them back. Lightning slamming the hull, thunder tearing at their ears. For a moment, Kalen thought they would fall, that her people's cruelty would win after all. Then the clouds broke. The shuttle burst through into the silence of space. Darkness spread endless around them, the stars blazing bright, untouched by storms or cruelty. Venos 4 lay below, shrinking, glowing, its jewel-like beauty marred by fire and ruin. Kalen pressed her forehead to the window. Her home, her prison, the world that never wanted her. Her voice shook. It's gone. Elias turned to her. No, he said softly. It's behind. For the first time, Kalen let herself breathe. She turned her golden eyes toward Elias, who sat bloodied and exhausted at the controls. Despite everything, he gave her a tired smile. You're safe now, he whispered. Safe. The word echoed in her heart, a word she had never known. She closed her eyes, whispering back. Because of you. The shuttle soared into the void, carrying them away from judgment, into the unknown. But the galaxy was vast, and not all its stars were kind. Their escape had only begun. The true test waited beyond the storm. Wanderers of the stars, the shuttle carried them far from Venos the Roar, but not from danger. To the Federation, Elias Carter was a deserter who had stolen a survey ship. To the Vayari, Kalen was worse than fractured. She was a traitor who had chosen a human over her own kind. Together, they were fugitives. Their faces whispered across the outer colonies, carried in the murmurs of traders and the records of hunters. Yet in the silence between stars, they built something no law could break. Their first refuge was a nameless moon orbiting a gas giant. Its surface was scarred and cold, lit only by the glow of auroras. There, Elias taught Kalen the basics of flight. She sat beside him in the cockpit, her small hands gripping controls twice her size, her golden eyes wide with focus. Keep her steady, Elias said as the shuttle shook. Kalen clenched her teeth. I am trying. The craft dipped, alarms flaring. She yanked the lever too hard, sending them into a spin. Elias laughed, steadying the controls with her. Not bad. You lasted longer than I did my first time. She shot him a look. You fell too? Harder than this, he admitted. For the first time, she allowed herself to grin mid-flight. Flying was not perfection. It was falling, failing, and trying again. And with each stumble, she felt stronger. Nights beneath the auroras became lessons in more than piloting. Elias showed her star charts, teaching her how to navigate by constellations. Kalen, in return, sang the forgotten songs of the Vayari, melodies that once resonated through crystal halls, now echoing only between them. Sometimes, When she sang, Elias swore the shuttle's walls shimmered faintly, as though her voice carried power not of this world. She told him the old belief of her people, that crystals were alive, that sound could awaken their memory. Elias listened with wonder. "Then maybe your voice is their heartbeat," he said. Her chest tightened at his words. For so long, her voice had been a mark of shame. Now it was something alive, something worth keeping. But their peace was always temporary. Hunters came. One night, as they refueled on a barren trade outpost, Kalen's sharp eyes caught the glint of Vayari armor in the shadows. "Elias," she whispered, her voice trembling. He looked up just as soldiers stepped into the light, weapons raised. "By order of the council, surrender the fractured one." Elias shoved Kalen behind him, drawing the small blaster at his side. Shots lit the dusty air, sizzling across crates. Kalen's heart pounded. She grabbed a shard of crystal from a broken crate, its surface humming faintly in her hand. As a soldier lunged, she swung with desperate strength. The shard rang like a bell. A wave of resonance pulsed through the air, hurling the soldier back. Both she and Elias froze. "What was that?" Elias gasped. Kalen stared at the glowing shard in her hand. Her voice shook. Maybe my flaw is not weakness." They fled before more soldiers arrived, but that moment burned in her heart. Her difference was not a curse, it was power. World by world, they wandered. On jungle planets, Elias taught her how to track water and build fire. On desert worlds, Kalen guided them with Vayari songs that seemed to call hidden springs from the sand. Each challenge that should have broken them instead made them stronger, but it was not just survival that bound them, it was choice. One night beneath the shimmering sky of an uninhabited world, Elias sat beside her by the fire. His face was lined with weariness, his hands scarred from countless battles. Yet when he looked at her, there was no regret. "Back on Earth," he said softly. "We have a saying. Home isn't a place. It's the people you choose." The flames painted her golden eyes with light. She studied him for a long moment, her chest aching with emotions she had no words for. Slowly she leaned against him, her voice barely a whisper. "Then I choose you." Elias's arm tightened around her shoulders. Above them the stars stretched endless, silent witnesses to a vow unspoken yet unbreakable. But in the darkness between those stars, enemies still hunted. The Federation wanted its human deserter. The Vayari wanted the fractured girl who dared to defy their perfection. Their bond had become their strength. But to the galaxy, it had also become a threat. And whispers had already begun, rumors of the human and the alien girl who stood together against empires. Legends are born not in safety but in pursuit, and legends always come with a price. From outcast to legend years passed, but the galaxy did not forget them. Across the outer rim, whispers spread of two wanderers, a human man and a small alien girl with golden eyes who could shatter crystal walls with her voice. Some said they were rebels who defied the council. Others said they were thieves, fugitives hunted by both the Federation and the Vayari. A few called them saviors, but to Kalen and Elias, titles meant nothing. To them, survival was family. To them, exile was freedom. To them, each other was home. The more they ran, the more dangerous their name became. On a mining world of black stone, they defended workers enslaved by a corrupt Federation captain. Elias fought with fire in his hands and grit in his heart, while Kalen's voice sent tremors through the ground, shaking machines into silence. On a jungle moon, they freed children captured by slavers. The children whispered her name, Kalen, as if it were a spell because her song had guided them safely through the dark. Each act lit another spark, and sparks across a galaxy become fire. But legends are never safe. One night, as they camped beneath a sky painted in red auroras, a shadow descended. A fleet of ships, sleek and merciless, surrounded their small shuttle. Vayari. The High Chancellor had not forgotten. His voice, cold as ever, poured through the comms. Fractured one. You should have died in silence. Instead, you have poisoned our name with your weakness. Tonight, both you and your human will be erased. Elias's jaw tightened. His hands gripped the controls, but his eyes flicked to Kalen. He was ready to die fighting. Kalen's chest trembled with fear, but also with something greater. For years she had run. For years she had been hunted. But not anymore. She closed her eyes and placed her hands on the crystal shard she always carried, the same shard that had once saved her on that dusty outpost. Elias, she whispered, don't fight the storm. Trust me. The Vayari ships opened fire, streaks of blue tearing across the night sky. The shuttle shook, alarms screaming. But Kalen's voice rose above the chaos, soft at first, then powerful, weaving through the air like light itself. The crystal shard in her hands began to glow. The walls of the shuttle trembled, not with fear, but with resonance. Her song carried into the void, into the very bones of the fleet around them. One by one, the enemy ships began to shudder. Their crystalline cores vibrated violently, unable to resist her resonance. Glass-like towers of energy cracked, splintered, and shattered into dust. The High Chancellor's voice snarled through the comms, full of rage and disbelief. Impossible, but Kalen's song only grew stronger. Her voice was not fractured. Her voice was whole. When silence returned, the fleet was gone, reduced to drifting shards of broken crystal across the stars. Only the shuttle remained, glowing faintly with the echoes of her power. Kalen fell forward, gasping, the shard dim in her hands. Elias caught her, holding her close. You saved us, he whispered, awe filling his voice. No, she said, weak but smiling. We saved each other. From that night, the whispers changed. No longer were they fugitives. No longer were they outcasts. They were the legends of the Outer Rim, the human who fought with fire and the alien girl whose voice could break empires. Stories spread faster than fleets. Some called them rebels, others heroes. To the fractured children abandoned across countless worlds, Kalen became something more. Proof that imperfection could be strength, that brokenness could be beautiful. And to Elias, she was not legend at all. She was simply the girl he chose and the girl who chose him. Years later, they stood together on the edge of another nameless cliff, watching twin suns rise over a new world. Kalen leaned against him, her golden eyes shimmering. Do you ever regret it? She asked softly. Regret what? Leaving your people, running from everything you knew. Elias smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. How can I regret when it led me to you? Kalen's throat tightened. For so long she had been cast aside, called fractured, abandoned as worthless. Now, in his arms, beneath endless stars, she finally knew the truth. She was not broken. She was not flawed. She was whole, because love had made her more than she ever believed she could be. And so the legend grew, not in the courts of empires, not in the halls of perfection, but in the hearts of those who whispered across the stars. She was cast aside for seeming alien to her own people, yet the first to hold her close was a human hand. And together, they rewrote the stars.